Doing great. Thank you for having
Doing
me,
well.
Jarrett.
Thank you guys for joining. So the main thing for listeners out there that we wanted to cover today is really just how do you incorporate digital marketing in traditional industries. So for those who aren't familiar with it, SiteCompli, is a company that enables property owners and managers to transform how works get done at the properties. So anything from inspections, maintenance to capital projects and more. So currently they're actually used by 65,000 plus buildings and over 1.5 billion square feet of real estate, which is huge. So they're one of the fastest growing companies in real estate tech, and one of Crane's best place to work in the last 3 years. So glad to have you, Seth. I'm really excited about this conversation. Share some good laughs and some good stories, and can't wait to share with the people. And I think a great starting point would be, I would love to hear or start with your story in terms of you starting at marketing with Conductor and how that industry experience transferred over to what you're currently doing now at SiteCompli.
No, you bet. I would love to do that. So yeah, I got my start. I joined Conductor, was marketer number one at the Conductor before it was even Conductor, and got a huge opportunity to see that grow through the years, through the 8 years that I was there at Conductor. We started off on that team, and I was doing everything from taking out the trash to trying to code up that first website and figure out those CMS systems, all the way through to building a market, building that enterprise SEO market, and having that product marketing, demand gen, corporate marketing activity. We got about 14, 15 people in the team there, and saw that grow as Conductor grew through the years, and saw that I joined it. I think there was 18 people in the organization, and
Wow.
see that rise through the 250. I love to see it now on the Capsus Forrester waves. I just caught it the other day, so shout out to the Conductor peeps and getting those enterprise tool awards again. But the really awesome part was I got to see how so many different and diverse kinds of companies did marketing. You'd look at, this is REI and what they do and their business to consumer marketing, and then you'd go and talk to here's NetSuite and here's how they do big B2B financial based marketing, and then you'd be like, okay, here's Citi, and they do dabble a little bit of both, and seeing not only how they did marketing, but where their digital marketing efforts fit into the rest of the organization, where you could take best practices on execs who got it and gave you that green light, and who they didn't. And it was a huge opportunity to get started. And when I left there and joined SiteCompli, the opportunity to take the knowledge and those learnings and everything like that, and trying to apply it to a very traditionally under utilized technology industry was amazing. It was amazing.
Totally. So I would love to know about that. I think we spoke about it in the green room, right? I would love for people to hear about it. So just knowing that you're coming from Conductor, which is an SEO enterprise tool, right? It's hard for us as marketers and salespeople not to utilize that knowledge and say, look, I'm gonna hit the ground running with some SEO. I'm gonna do some paid ads, social, the whole nine. So what was your approach, like starting off as the day one? What did that look like, and how did you, what were some of the things that helped grow to where you guys are today, which has been phenomenal?
Yeah, so I think the first day one, we probably took a couple missteps and did that same playbook, did the same thing of like, okay, let's start running those paid ads, let's start doing that, long tail SEO optimization and run for that. And we hadn't taken that step back and said, like, there are not a lot of people in the real estate industry who are sitting down in front of Google and typing property operations software into the search engines, right? And so what we realized is we had to go back and do that same thing. We were building an industry. When we first started a Conductor, SEO was not a marketing function, it was a technical function, and we had to make it a marketing function through that same thing. I remember that day when I first got Marketo and Eloqua, as a marketer, and we went from moving from blasting email lists out to, setting up the rules and how we were engaged with people. And we have to build that same, industry, and we still are building that same industry at SiteCompli, and saying, hey, if you could manage the way your properties work, the times you want things to happen, and you can be the architect and leverage that, it's a huge deal. But that thing of saying, what I was successful at in my last gig, I'm going to go do ahead again, I think can be so super dangerous, like for a marketer to do.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. Like how much in this industry, because we see it here in the digital marketing space. Companies, hi, we want services, and then they'll maybe go sign with some company that says they're a vertical specialist in that industry, right?
Yeah.
And that's just ripe for errors and problems, right? Because that vertical specialist only does that industry, doesn't see any of these other outside problems, and it turns into, you've just signed with a company that has no idea of the unknown unknowns, right? They just
That's
know the
exactly right.
one thing, right? And as we were kind of talking about this and getting warmed up, it's the equivalent of like, hi, I just spent millions of dollars on building a ship, and I have it in my my dry dock, and I just kind of let it go out, and then it tips over, right? And then you didn't launch your ship right, and you got a wasted $1 million product, right, or whatever the cost of it might be, because you went with some specialist that only knew how to do one thing. Right?
That's right.
How much of that amalgam, that vision you got from working with all those different cool companies at Conductor has allowed you to then pivot and reapply that to what you're doing now?
Absolutely. It's a huge part of it, and I think like the bottom line is two things I take away from that. One is never surround yourself with people who think like you, and that's especially true in my case, because nobody wants that. Like you can ask anybody at SiteCompli, they're like, we'll take one and one only of someone who thinks like Seth, right? But if you can surround yourself with people who don't think exactly the same way, not only are you going to bring those different tactics, but you actually have the conversations of why are we doing this? What are we trying to accomplish? And then go to the how are we going to get there? Is it that we need to spend more time developing that early stage content because we just need that awareness and that's what we need? Or is it, we are chasing a competitor, there's already RFPs out there, and if we're not in the game, we're losing, right?
Totally.
There's not a one size fits all for that. And you got to be able to go with folks who can help you understand and bring the tools that they brought to different experiences to come solve your problems. It's just that's the way to get ahead in general in life, I think, and not just digital marketing as well.
Yeah, diversity is usually the best solution than the same thing, right? I mean, it's the reason why farmers plant different crops around each other that aren't affected by the same pestilence of some sort, right? So one bug doesn't wipe out everything they're doing, right? But it's also a case in point where if you go with that specialist, you're getting the same rinse and repeat thing they just sold to 25 other people, but you're paying the full price.
That's right.
Right? You're not getting any custom thought, right? There's no cool thinking going involved with that, right? You might get a little initial boost in the beginning because they have a little lay of the land, but you're then thrown right back into the rinse and repeat playbook that they're cookie cutter for every other company.
Exactly right.
And a rinse and repeat won't work in that. I think the biggest takeaway I took from you just now, Seth, is just understanding your market, right? You guys understood, you could have easily said, first of all, nobody's going to search for a vertical that you guys are creating, right? So nobody knows it. So how can that's not going to be applicable for you guys? But the fact that you guys were able to say, hey, we're going to create content, build awareness, we're going to show them what is the true value behind that. I think that was genius from a marketing perspective, because like you said, you could have spent money, resources in other areas, and it could have been trouble.
Literally, this way we sold software in this industry was jump in a cab, go to somebody's office, shake somebody's hand, right? That's the old school real estate way you sell software. And the solution to
handshake now, you could elbow.
Hey, don't get me started on how we have to adapt on that. We're farther behind. But the thing on that was the solution wasn't to say, okay, let's switch entirely to a outbound SDR driven, it wasn't replace your relationship selling. It was figuring out how can you bring efficiencies and bring the tools and the tricks that you used on the other side of things to get out there and say, okay, maybe we don't need to be there, but we can have the same kind of conversations. How do we focus marketing on creating environments that are going to be successful for salespeople to introduce more efficiently, and how do we measure that and move forward on those kinds of things? You roll. Yeah, you roll.
I think the key word you used in there is relationship, right? I mean, technology is beautiful, but technology on autopilot is very dangerous, right?
Absolutely.
And if you really get to take your experiences to foster and build a strong relationship, whatever industry you're in, with the people you're trying to sell to, that, that relationship will go way farther than the shiny bauble thing that somebody thinks they bought.
There's a perfect example in our SDR outreach that we used. We realized that when our SDRs, our sales development reps, right, put in a random story from their personal life in the beginning of an email, they got better responses than when they just went with feature, value benefits first. It's like, hey, I just got back from being a week off, had a great time with the kids. Anyway, if I could ask for you just a second and move forward with that. And we're like, why does this work? Right? Like it's the exact opposite thing that we'd think about in marketing, which is not make it about us, make it about the customer. But in the reality, the customer wants to have a relationship first. Totally. And everything you need to do has to in B2B, it's like everything has to start with that. Is our marketing supporting a relationship development with someone one-to-one down the road? Because if it's not,
absolutely. I think that's in sales in general, especially with all this going on. And like you're speaking my language, because that's something that I do totally, right? So what I do on LinkedIn, right? Instead of me saying, hey, we're the best SEO agency out there, we're great at creating content, it's, hey, these are the things I've overcome in my life, and also how I applied it to digital marketing, and now it's relatable. Now if you want to buy from somebody, now it's like, hey, I know this guy, or me jet skiing with my child. They're like, oh, he's a great dad. I can get with this guy, and that's so important. I think even today, people overlook that. You can't just think of it just like marketing. Hey, I put a post out there. It's like when you work from tools like Zoom Info, sometimes you forget there's a person in the name. You just think of a name to get to the target. You know what I mean? And as a person, they have goals, they have, feelings. And then once you get to that, and establish that relationship, it makes the whole process that much better.
Right,
exactly
right. It goes to that, hey, I'm going to speak in a public forum for some particular reason. And the thing that gets people to love you is the self-deprecating humor that normalizes yourself, makes you very human to people, right? And as a parent, like I'm trying to teach my daughter that, mistakes are not a bad thing, but the mistakes are the important thing, and you move on. They're all learning experiences. So I'm bringing this back around into this topic of and I talk a lot in my hands. I'm sorry.
That's all good. That's all good.
But, you're in this potentially traditional business, right?
Yep.
But then you're applying remarkable marketing skill sets to a group of people that suddenly that haven't been approached this way before. How is that reception and that approach after you've got the relationship going, right? How is that opening up? It's
been amazing. Look, people want to build community. They want to be involved. Like what you and Jared are doing right here is building a community, right? And it's a way to do that. We started off, and we did this at Conductor, where we're like, what started off as 12 people in a room, at somebody else's conference, became 1,500 people, industry event, party on the deck of the Intrepid, all that fun stuff. But what drove that was, we're not talking about us. We're talking about how do we make marketers better? How do we help them go forward? We do the same thing, how can we share information? How can you run a better business? How can you make it safer for your residents? How can you make it healthier? How can you improve it? How can you improve your bottom line and make your residents happier and safer? Like if we can do that and help you with that, it'll come back. The community comes back, and it'll go from there, right? And we did that same thing. We have our Real Focus event, which started the same way, and now has 500 people, coming and things like that. Last year, and we're all on digital. We'll figure that out this year, but next month, and it helps. You say, here's a real estate, company. It's family owned, and the next generation is coming in, and they grew up doing everything on their phones, and so they need to make that transition. Well, how can they help explain to everybody else how they can do it and go from there? And that is always the thing, is let your customers be your advocates. That's just get out there.
And to that point, like you've been there now for a good bit, right?
Yeah, so 5 years.
You've gone through some of these ups and downs and whatnot. How much of this community have you seen start to kind of reach out to you as they've moved on to other things, right? I'm focused on the relationship doesn't end when the person stops working at one place. The relationship is just as strong when the person goes to a new place. How's that impacting your business?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And like I think if you overlay that repeat dynamic with where are you in building a market, that's a later stage market event, right? When
Yep.
you start having people like, hey, I'm going to take you along because I've used your product or a product like yours at my last company, and I go into this company and they have nothing like that. You need to reach out and grab that, right? And that's an indication that you've got a mature technology market, right? When you first
Yeah.
start in that 5 years, you don't have any of that, right? You don't have any of it at all because you're pitching to maybe a customer a new product they might use in a new way, or you're saying, hey, will you buy this kind of thing for the first time? But it snowballs and keeps going from there, and you get to it. And we've seen it now where people pick up the phone and say, hey, yeah, I just started a new job. Can we bring SiteCompli in? It's like, that's awesome. And,
Right.
that has led, we're actually up to 1.8 billion square feet, of, so I got to keep getting our, our about us things, right? But like, there's a huge amount of folks that are out there using our product and they're learning, and we're learning it from all the times. But I honestly think we have just scratched the surface. This is such an industry that is so ripe for disruption in that side of things that like there's a lot left to come.
So what would next plans be? Like, where does the disruption go?
So in our industry, I think there's all kinds of things, right? So, I often when I talk to people, like, if you live in an apartment building, how happy are you with like the service of your property management and company and how they get through there and what your interaction can be, right? Well, your property management company wants you to be thrilled, right? The last thing they want to do is go through a turn, but they may not have the solutions and mechanisms to be able to run that the way it's cost effective for their organization. How can we scale that? How can we make that grow? And then how can we start tying into other technologies? In the real estate space, this for us right now is about how do you manage what your people do, but it's also triggered by data feeds, right? If you get we are constantly, we pull about 2 million different data points every day just in New York about the buildings in New York. And we use that to trigger things like, oh, you're better have a maintenance person head out to that building because something's wrong. Well, imagine now when that starts to go and an Internet of Things device is going on. A water sensor says, hey, ping someone to go take a look at this, and then automatically shut off that valve. These are, amazing things that can make our buildings better, can improve the, and we view it as, there's lots of work to be done on how to make where you live, where you work, where you play a better place. And there's lots of technology there.
That's amazing. Like I would love to be proactive and have the property manager come fix the toilet or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, you
need an Internet of Things toilet. My flusher isn't working.
Exactly. And this is the sort of thing that like property managers struggle with, right? Because there's a wide variety of like, how many people do I need for each one of these? How can I service them the best way? Well, if you can put 20-30%, efficiencies in place, that makes it a better spot. It just makes it a better spot because you don't have to say, all right, how fast can I go and what can I do on those kinds of things? You're right there. It's already happening, and things are happening the way you'd want to happen to make it a better environment.
So staying in the environment stage, right? Like,
yeah.
Aside from, I guess you come in and you have a conversation. Theoretically, it's a conversation with the building owner manager, and you've got that, efficiency, savings, profitability conversation. When do you start having conversations about improving quality of life with residents? Is that part of a thing? Does that happen? I mean, is there this conversation on the Internet of Things? Hey, I could put sockets in your house that turn off your electricity when things aren't, and your electric bill can go down, and your building could become could become greener, and then you get these other credits or pay less money. Like, has that started to occur?
Yeah, I mean, those are definitely part of the conversations. There are a variety of pieces. Obviously, the win-win is when you're like, this is a budgetary savings, it improves the quality of life for your folks, and it helps the environment. Those are like the triple crown, the triple wins where you're able to line those up. You always have to make it something that is, relatable to the person who has to pay for it, who has to do for it, and that's just part of the business of making sure that that's out there. But there are always conversations about like, how can we make this better? Like every property manager would love to be able to offer a better experience at the same price. Yeah, right, like that. So when you can think about, well, what kind of market are you in? Are you in a Class A market where you're like rent is not really an issue and there's like it's more about amenities, or are you in a different environment where it's like cost and price sensitivity is the thing that drives the entirety of our market? And like if you can't get there, how do you do that? And then the regulatory side, right? What do we have to do? What do we need to do to make sure that things are safe and careful and that they're set up appropriately, and that they manage that within what's called the NOI, the net operating income of that building, because every one of these buildings has their own, budgets and P&Ls that runs just like your business does.
Yeah. I mean, I could totally see how your performance with the building management becomes a building manager's or a building owner's, gem in their crown to go market to new residents, right? The thing you're performing makes it easier for them to go get better clients, right?
That's exactly right. We have resident portal integrations. We have our own resident portal, tickets, all those elements. But for instance, the turns is a big thing, right? Someone moves out of one of your apartments. How long is that apartment off the market before someone new moves in? Well, if you've got to coordinate everything, you're doing it by hand. There's someone, sending Post-it notes and following up what has to happen on that. And it takes 7 days for that turn to happen. If you can get that on 2, that's 5 days of additional rent, that is collected from that. Everyone's happier. They can move in back faster. Everything is seamless. It's not a pain in the butt to move out of that. And, it's a win-win-win for everybody on those situations. Those are the kind of things that really can drive, and where technology and marketing about how might you to new markets can really thrive.
I have a couple of clients, or we have a couple of clients that are in the real estate business. If we could connect that technology to them and get some money moving between us and get those pocket deals happening before those other vendors put them up, let's go do that.
You got it. You got it. Absolutely. Exactly right. So, but everything from evaluating potential businesses or buildings as an acquisition target and saying what's going on there and what are the inspections that we need to do and making that more efficient, all the way through to ongoing maintenance is like something that, 10 years ago wasn't a thing, 5 years. And the way we do property management 2 to 3 years from now will look nothing like the way it's been done for the last 50 years. And property managers who adapt will be competitive and succeed.
Are you?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Jack. Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you. I'm curious because obviously this industry has been, every industry has been impacted with the COVID, right? I can see it either go one way where you guys are skyrocketed. I can also see a way where it kind of stay flat. Like, I'm curious, like, how were you guys really impacted with that? Like, in terms of like the way you interact with people, like you said, the relationships have changed. Like, just how has that affected you guys?
Yeah. So, I mean, early March, and everything like that, everybody went into like, hey, I'm trying to just figure out how to, get everything settled and like, don't talk to us at all, which was a fun way to start the end of the first quarter. Around April, May, people started saying, hey, actually, we can talk a little bit more because we're working from home and we're not hopping between, properties or things like that on how we can do efficiencies. In early May, we had a client who came to us and said, we want to provide a better level of service about our COVID cleaning routines and disinfecting routines. Mm-hmm. And they went to the CDC website and we're like, well, here are the things that they say to do. And here are your like recommendations on what should your people wear to be safe and what are the right chemicals and is it enough to disinfect it? We put in a workflow into our app. They contacted us on Thursday. We loaded up on a Friday. By Saturday, all their properties were actually using that to make sure that there were disinfectants going on. These are senior living in areas where like this makes a real difference. And we had one of our customers that said like using your product literally saved lives in our buildings. And it was one of those things where like you never expect to say that, right? You go in and you say, as a marketer, we're not saving lives here. We're selling products or making things better. And we literally got feedback of you have saved lives in our building, right? Which was awesome. It was amazing to see. And like, it's also just amazing to see the customer success and the people like rally around that kind of stuff, because they care deeply for our customers and getting them out there as well, and it was awesome to see. I think there's more of that, right? What happens to make sure things are done the right way? We're going to continue to see that, and as people go through stressful times of like the dollars and cents of it, and how can we set it up, being efficient is going to really matter, and that's where we've gone there. But
that's a pretty amazing story, right? I mean, think about it. In 14 days leads to a spike, right? And you solve something in 48 hours.
Yeah.
To be preventative. That's a pretty good thing to be able to put out.
Yeah, it was a good day when we heard about that, and yeah, it was fun.
I was gonna say the willingness to adapt, though, the fact that you had it on Thursday and then by Saturday it was deployed, like that's what separates the good from the great. You know what I mean? Like that's the main thing right there I took away from that, and it really added impact. That's like amazing.
Yeah, I mean, you got to like early, jump in front of that stuff. When you're early in the market, you can't afford to sort of like let it out and change over time, right? You just got to jump and you got to be able to go. And
you have to be nimble. You have to just go.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Seth, be nimble. Seth, be quick.
Yeah, I love it. I'm not jumping over anything here. I'm going to sprain something. I've been sitting in front of the Zoom for the last 6 months.
So obviously you're on a curve, right?
Yeah.
Do you see, and this would be my final question.
Yeah, it's all good.
We're coming up on our time, but do you see now competitor acquisition falling into your market mix in the sense like that, right? How's that play? Growth through acquisition.
So there's lots of opportunities here. There are overlap areas where we talk about tenant interactions, those Internet of Things that I talked about before. The adjacent markets on this there's an incredible number of opportunities there. There's no one size fits all roadmap that people want to do. Some people are like, I just want to move off of pen and paper inspections onto a digital format, and if I can put some automation in, great. Other folks are like, I want everything automated and I want Internet of Things devices triggering things. I want data pools in there. And we're like, great, that's awesome. We can go as wide as you want there and as deep as you want. There are a lot of smart people thinking about this. And I don't think it just exists in real estate either, by the way. I think in education, like just watching my 3 kids try and do the virtual schools aspect of it. Look at something like the language learning stuff, Duolingo and stuff. And that's like so base level. But like when you think of what they do all day and what are the interactions and how can we trigger that and how can we make that more immersive, huge opportunities in education, I think. I still think there's huge opportunities in real estate, those aspects of it. Health, it's tricky because you got to be like, overlaps. You don't want to, get too far out of your skis in that. But these are industries that are very old school and have been done the same way for a long time. This is beyond just the acquisition question, I guess. But like, are hugely right. Yeah, exactly right. There's some in there as well. So like, we have a product, SiteCompli Learning, for instance, that is an educational product that teaches folks in New York City how to comply with anti-sexual harassment discrimination, because it's like our customers are there, they're in a solution, they need a product to comply with this law. We offer that solution, and there's areas to offer it up in there. There's some really cool overlaps as well that go through in that and go from there.
Cool. That's exciting.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It's good stuff.
That takes us back to the part of not being cookie cutter, right? Like the opportunity to be the willingness to act on a thing, the willingness to be unique, the willingness to be different, all in the same bag, right?
Yeah.
Like,
and it goes back for people's individual careers. I'd say the same thing. Like, figure out what you're trying to do and try and stretch that. If you're not in a spot where you are able to fail safely because you're trying to do something you've never done before, you're not in the right spot. You know what? You don't want to be so over your skis that you're lost, right? But if you're not in an opportunity where you might fail and it won't bring down your company and it won't bring down your department, it won't bring down, you personally as a job, but you're stretching and doing something you've never done before, that's a good place to be in. You can stretch it. You're gonna bring the rest of your company along with that. If you can keep yourself in that zone, that's what we try and do all day long.
Yeah, I would have to agree that we do the same.
Yeah, I can tell. It's great stuff.
So much stuff in the fire, man. We've got so many things going on. In terms of content, man, we've made a movie. Shout out to Mike.
I saw that. I thought that was awesome. I watched that. I watched that. It was really, really cool. It's very purple vibes. It's got all the pooper and blue for iPullRank. It's good stuff.
That's what we've been doing, man, since the COVID, just adapting, right? How do we stay? How do we have multiple touch points across all channels, right? How do we stay top of mind and just kind of hunt and hover? And it's really been working for us. Kind of like what you said. It was like March, April. It was like, all right, Jared, don't talk to me. I just everything's just gone.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to June, July, it's like, Jared, we're opening up. Just be patient, man. We're there. And now it's to the point I've got a meeting like right after this. I'm like, damn, I gotta go right from Rankable to it.
That's awesome. I love it.
Well, you're all warmed up now, Jared, so I would expect to close.
I would hope so. I hope so now. But I want to say thank you again, Seth. I think we're running on our time here. I want to say I really appreciate it for joining Rankable. I've learned a lot. This segment is really, really important. I definitely owe you a cold one when things.
I love it. I love it.
And for all those watching, thank you for joining in for episode 15. We are here because of you guys. Thank you for the continued support, the DMs, the messages. Like, it means a ton to us, the whole team. And shout out to the entire team for all the work behind the scenes. Kevin, Mike, everybody else, man. Love you guys. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you very much, guys.
Bye-bye.
All right. Take care.